okay. I'm going to rush into it because he's a busy man, and the man that's been glowing ever since is Mr. Graham Hood. How are you, Graham? I know you're on another big thing you've raced over. I want to thank you very much for coming across. We're honoured to have you.
Hey, Graham.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this. Something a bit ad hoc, a little bit freelance. It's really good. Yeah, it's been really frantic, and there's been lots of Zooms going on, and the one I just got out of was awesome.
Okay.
Everyone trying to get Victorians
fired up.
This situation, you know what I mean? It's just dreadful.
So what was the point of the one you were just on?
Basically, about 15 to 20 influencers that have been really running with this debate ever since these mandates came out, just firing people up to let every politician in the country know that they're on notice if Dan Andrews gets this dictatorship off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. I mean,
the whole world's watching, guys. I was on Stu Peters the other day and we talked about it, and they're horrified at what's going on in Melbourne and Victoria.
Okay. What's the American interest like, did you find?
Massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. You know, like if Australians would only fight for their rights like they fought for toilet paper, you know what I mean? The Americans, people all around the world are demonstrating for Australians and Victorians. And
you got to remember, the Vietnam War. They went to the Vietnam War to stop communism taking over Vietnam because they didn't want all the Asian things to fall over like dominoes. And here we are. If Dan gets this, the other states are going to get it. Forget democracy in Australia. That's what I've been saying on the steps of the Parliament now. We are on the edge of democracy. That's what it is. It's about to fall unless we fight.
Exactly right. Big thunderstorm raging here, but it's drifting away now. But it's nice to be on the ground in a thunderstorm instead of up in the air with one.
Where are you, Graham? Whereabouts are you, mate?
Northern New South Wales. I'm just below the Queensland border, to the west of about 2 hours west of Byron Bay.
Is it easy to get over the Queensland border now, or is that still difficult?
No. I mean, you know, my daughter and 3 grandkids and her husband live 2 hours drive from here, and I haven't seen them for yonks. I mean, it's just absolute bull. No, it's not. Look, but it depends on which officers are on the border at the time. And, you know, we get border passes. And if you've got a reason, like a medical reason to go over, because I live in the border bubble, you can get across. But, I mean, you know, everything's at the whim of the premiers, you know. You know,
seeing family would be a mental health reason, wouldn't it? Seeing family would be a mental health reason? I mean, could be considered.
Mate, just living in Australia today is a mental health reason. I mean...
Yeah,
it's just bizarre. I mean, people have been locked out of Queensland at the border. They're living in tents and living in their cars for weeks, and yet NRL stars and their families can fly in on chartered aircraft and do what they like, and VIPs, movie stars. But you know, I've got a friend who lives nearby who his father was raced to hospital in Brisbane, and nobody could visit him. He was an old man, and he died up there. They couldn't go up and see the body or anything. The only way they could get his body back for a funeral in New South Wales, he had to be cremated up there and the ashes shipped back to here. I mean, anyone who thinks that that's cool isn't Australian. I mean, that's just bizarre.
We had a young girl do a speech today, first ever protest, her first ever beach speech. She was trembling as she said it. And what she did was she's lost her job, her whole family's lost her job, but her father's in a nursing home, or grandfather's in a nursing home, and they couldn't go to see her. Finally, she got to see him, and by that stage, he'd forgotten who she was because the dementia kicked in. So she'd finally got in to see him, and she said he didn't recognize me.
Isolation is the worst thing for degenerative diseases, degenerative cognitive abilities. Isolation is the worst thing you could possibly do to them. The only metric we have is COVID.
Yeah, the insult to the Australian public is these premiers saying they care. That's the insult. Just stop saying that lie. Just go, we want to take over. We don't give a shit. Stop.
Please.
At least give us the decency of dropping that lie.
You know? Stop. We're all in it together. I haven't heard that one much lately. That used to be all the time on the TV, but I don't watch TV anymore. But
Daddy Daniel wants us all to see him as the father of all the people who live in Victoria.
Yeah,
the savior. Dad like Danny.
The savior of us.
I think an absent father would be even better, to be honest.
Now, can I ask you? I'm very interested in the moments before you did that incredible rant, because I'm going to tell you There has been dark days for ages now, and people share the light. And my wife said, "Oh my God, you've got to watch this." And then the next day, everyone was going, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this?" You were just spreading like wildfire, a wildfire of hope. But before you did it, how did it feel to go, "What am I going to do here?" Because man, you held nothing back. What did that feel like?
I got to tell you, Michelle will back me up. I was wandering around the house like a bear with a sore head for 2 weeks. I mean, something had to happen. I do a lot of welfare. I did a lot of welfare when I worked at Qantas. I've always been a mentor of younger pilots, and I've been a confidant and of many pilots. And I got a bit of a reputation when I took Alan Joyce on in social media about 3 years ago over a silly policy that he brought out, and all the staff thought it was great, and they thought I was brave. And anyhow, I had
What
a real
was the policy, Graham? Could you share us with what the policy
yeah,
was?
sure. He announced a profit about 3 or 4 years ago, profit for Qantas, which has been good because that's helped through these dark days. So, profits. Airlines need to make profits because they bleed money at the drop of a hat.
Mm.
And he said in his press conference that he was proud to announce that they'd allocated $63 million out of their budget to give every staff member a $1,500 bonus. And everyone thought, wow, that's really cool, Anyhow, and a few days later, we got a letter in our inboxes saying that bonus was dependent on any future agreement to sign a contract or an EBA agreement. So it was a bribe. It wasn't a bonus. And I was incensed. I thought you'd have been better off just sending us a greeting card, and save $63 million. So I wrote to him and told him that, and I offered a few suggestions to boost morale that wouldn't have cost so much money. And I felt that it was a bribe. And he emailed me back, and he got stuck into me. He just said my email was appalling, and he was going to make sure personally that I never got my bonus. So I thought, what? So
made it personal.
He made it personal.
You insulted God.
I put my email to him on Facebook, and then I put his reply up to show everybody what he was really like, and it went viral. It went gangbusters all around the world.
I'll look that up.
and anyhow, then I had to take it down because people were getting too personal against him. They were talking about his stature and his gender, diversity, and I mean, it got really ugly. And I don't like people attacking other people. I mean, attack policy, attack the system, but everybody's got a heart. And we've all got a conscience, even Alan Joyce. So let's protect that as best we can. And so I took it down, but I was taken offline for 2 weeks while they investigated my breach of social media policy, and then they had me go to a meeting, a disciplinary hearing, and before they let me go back to work, they made me do a psych test. So I mean, it was. The meetings were conducted well by the managers that were involved in it.
What's a site test? The site test, you mean for being a pilot? You had. Is that what you meant?
No, they said to me before. They said to me before we can let you go back to work, you need to talk to the company doctor so he can make sure you're psychologically well enough.
A psych test. I thought you said psych.
So he thinks you're
a psych test. It's
Okay.
Are you afraid he
because of wrong think? You had wrong think. Not allowed to have wrong think. We're all heading there. That's going to happen to all of us. Wrong think.
Well, look at this. That we're talking about wrong think. So Lunig did this, which is famous now, and he's gone. He's gone. And people today, I saw people today putting him down, saying, "Oh, he's a loony." Lunig is Australia's canary of our soul. Lunig is that. If we silence him, that is a warning signal to all of Australians. This is a major artist that we've just silenced. Oh my God!
So what has he been censored into oblivion?
That apparently the age is getting rid of him because he doesn't like in this thing now. It's what he wrote today. This is an inclusive society, and if we feel you are talking, thinking, or behaving in a non-inclusive way, you will be excluded. So that's what they're doing, and it's because he did this cartoon where he linked a man standing up to a tank with a syringe, the same as the man in the tanks in China. And
Hey,
it's ideological.
Can I raise something? Can I raise something just between the three of us?
Yeah, sure. No one's listening. No one listens to us.
That's why we weren't invited to the thing you were on before.
Go ahead.
Has there ever been a regime or a movement or a nation in history that survived democratically that censored everybody into oblivion, that denied truth, and that coerced its population into doing something they didn't want to do? Has there ever been a regime that survived that? Has there ever been a regime in history that reminds us of what we're going through now? You know, I mean, really, we've got to look at what happened in Europe in the 20s and 30s and 40s. I mean, we are millimeters from being that way in Australia. We are.
Graham, it was called the Democratic Republic of East Germany. They don't care. It doesn't worry them. Doesn't matter.
Can I just show you something? Like the media portrays protesters as we've been protesting on the Parliament steps all week. The media portrays the protesters either as climate change or anti-vaxxers. I just want to show you a few images because they're exhausted today. They're soul exhausted, Graham. So this is a young man. I won't say his name. He has a franchise business, very, very successful. He can't get into it now. He's on the things of losing it. And all he has to do not to lose it is get vaccinated, but his integrity won't let him. This grandmother comes down and brings all her grandkids down. She's the same, holding on to Australia's values. This woman here used to be a real estate agent. She's single mum. Tammy is her name, really struggling. Now she's trying to be a reporter where she's just basically streaming everything that's going on. She's told me today that she's soul exhausted. This man is a major violinist, and he was going to go to Europe to on the possibility of having a solo career, which is very difficult to do as a solo instrument. He's here now on the steps with us. He doesn't care about that. He's defending freedom. His name's Markin. He's a great friend of mine now. This man used to be living under apartheid in South Africa. He can't believe it's coming here. He comes here. He talks to the police gently, warning them. The history will see you badly. You know, basically, he's a lovely guy. He brings us all water. He's a lovely, wonderful guy. These two women and a group of them go down to a local shopping centre dressed like this every day, and they come down. This young man wants to see his kids in regional Victoria, and I love the fact that the policeman is looking at him, and I just love the fact that he wasn't scared of the police, which was great. And this young man is I believe he's an engineer or something, and he's coming down because he feels like he's second-class citizen in his time. And today, there's all these people coming down. They're all highly skilled people who have walked away from their careers or been kicked out. Even if we had no morality, economically, it's a hatchet job for our country in a time when we need to prosper. But these people are real, and they know that if Dan gets these laws, they could face real consequences, and they still come down and sit on the steps. Everything that is good about Australia is at that protest. I love going there just to be around them.
I've got to tell you that that one of the most concerning things since I made that video was the fact that within hours I got thousands and thousands of messages from people who've lost their spirit, who are broken. And the whole reason I'm doing this is I want to keep the flame alive in the spirit that is Australia. I don't want it to fade away. That's my big thing. I'm not a political animal, although I'm making a lot of political statements. But it's more to me about how we're going to come through this, and are we still going to have our spirit intact?
Yeah. And
some of the people who've been contacting me, and I'm getting about 30,000 messages a week. They are, many of them are on the brink of suicide. I kid you not.
Yeah.
And I am convinced that I've lost a few of them. Yeah. I haven't lost them. We have lost them. The Australian nation has lost them. Now, it got so frantic. I mean, I'm getting lots and lots of love in these messages, and I'm skimming through those, and I'm not able to respond to everybody. But Michelle and I and some volunteers have been skimming through the messages looking for those that need support. And it got so desperate about a week ago, or a bit longer, nearly 2 weeks ago, that I put out a video begging people who are unemployed at the moment, who have any mental health skills, mental health nurses, psychologists, crisis counsellors, psychiatrists, please make yourselves available, because I am desperate to get support to these people. And a very entrepreneurial young lady living on a yacht in the Brisbane River on an old boat designed and put up a Facebook page called Hoodies Helpers. And she
great.
invited people to come on board. Now, Hoodies Helpers is now a movement that is spreading worldwide. Thousands and thousands of volunteers have come on board. They've created a website called Hoodies Helpers. It's www.hoodieshelpers.com.au. They're linking up a 24/7 mental health hotline on that, a number that's going to be on the website. It ran for a couple of hours, I think, yesterday, and the whole system melted down. It couldn't cope with the calls. Now, what happened is they've had to revamp the technology, and they're bringing in bigger guns to handle the movement. The movement has taken off. There is a Telegram page, Hoodies Helpers, and
Hoodies
there
Helpers.
are chapters. Yep, Hoodies Helpers. There are chapters all over Australia. Every state has a Hoodies Helpers chapter. And in New Zealand, it's been looked at all around the world. We looked at the internet stats today, even in China. I wonder who's looking at that. All over North America, I've talked to the Yanks about it, and they're interested in opening chapters over there. And now we're going to be offering services like financial counselling. We're going to link to food banks. We're putting up a list of businesses that support people who aren't vaxxed. Teachers who are unemployed are going to be running Zoom homeschool classes for parents who are homeschooling their kids. And there are support groups in neighbourhoods who are forming up to have coffee with each other and to go on walking groups together. And not only that, when somebody gets up and gets on the Telegram page and says, I'm feeling really down, I don't know what to do, I think I'm at my wit's end, they get smothered in love and help. And this has just taken off. Now, this really excites me, guys, because this is the spirit of Australia. And despite the darkness that we're living in, tens of thousands of people are coming on board with Hoodies Helpers, and they're loving and supporting each other. And you know what? Daniel Andrews couldn't do that in a pink fit. Daniel Andrews would not. He wouldn't be able to organise that much support. I can tell you that right now. And that's the support he's going to lose at the next election.
Could you see? Sorry, Graham. Just say that. Do you know that Lifeline has been cutting volunteers who aren't vaccinated on their?
Yep.
That's happened.
Guess where they're going?
What you're saying to you?
Guess where they're going to Hoodies Helpers.
Hoodies Helpers. That's awesome news.
So Xi Jinping apparently.
Xi Jinping, he's probably going.
He said it was going well in China. Nothing goes well in China without his okay, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But we're really, really buoyed by that. Oh, there it is, Hoodies Helpers. Yeah, for
Hoodies Helpers for anyone who
Graham,
wants. That is fantastic news, Graham.
Just for a second, because I wanted to ask something before about Alan Joyce. Because what strikes me about guys like Alan Joyce, and there's quite a lot of them, there's a lot of them in the arts industry, they're really pro same-sex marriage, all about equality. How dare you exclude anyone in contemporary Australian setting, all the rest of it. Fair enough. That's passed. It's all law. Now, suddenly, it's okay to disenfranchise a group of people again. How does someone like Alan Joyce begin to reconcile that?
Well, you know what he has to come to terms with? That a lot of the people he's shutting out of his own airline voted yes in that referendum. They supported him in that referendum.
Yeah. I know.
And for me, it's just ludicrous. The other side of that that's dark is that there is no way that this gene therapy has been through the rigours enough to be guaranteed to be safe when pumped into pilots' arms.
I know.
Right, because
isn't it true that there's several plane crashes that have happened and they're concerned about them?
Yeah, well, it's hard to get the exact data on that, but I personally know of 2 pilots in Australia who have died after the jab. Not at work, they died on days off.
So East-West Airlines in America have let go of the mandate. They've said it's okay.
Southwest.
Yeah, Southwest. Sorry.
Yep. Now that's because that they're getting pushback over there. You know, the supporters of the US Freedom Flyers, who are supporting pumping money into their legal action against the airlines, are the passengers. The American travelling public seem to have a mentality that, hang on, I think we're more at risk of our pilots getting a blood clot than we are of catching COVID from them. And they're speaking up. And what's more, the air crews that work for these airlines and the employees, the ground handlers and everything, they're all picketing the airports and they're picketing their head offices. Where are our airline employees? I mean, I resigned to give the folks in this industry in Australia a voice, but they're still hiding in the shadows, and there's thousands of them. And, you know, I believe that Qantas is struggling because they've only got about 65% with only days to go to the deadline, of people saying that they're filling in the form saying that they've been double jabbed. So they're going to be in a crisis if that number's. Now, I'm urging all airline people and anyone who's got an interest in safety, the first thing, if you've been adversely affected by the gene therapy, you need to speak up. You have a responsibility to declare what's happened to you to the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, who are doing nothing. The Civil Aviation Safety Authority are doing nothing as far as testing. They're allowing pilots to fly around with an experimental gene therapy, and yet if I take a codeine because I've got a head cold, I'm not allowed to fly.
Oh,
Now they're doing
my God.
No, the inconsistencies are just frightening. Always.
Oh, my God.
Contradictions. Yeah, you're not supposed to notice.
That, and there are 16 basic questions that we pilots have been asking the company and the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Things about, have you conducted any high altitude testing? Have you conducted any are you happy with the fact that pilots are flying stressed because of mandates? Can you guarantee the long-term safety effects? Can you guarantee that I will pass my annual physical to keep my license? And we're getting nothing back. Just check it out with your GP is what we're being told. So,
and the GPs can do nothing.
Yeah, they're not allowed to.
That's right.
They can't say anything.
Yeah.
When I get a physical, I go to a designated aviation medical examiner, who is a GP largely, who's been certified by CASA to be a designated aviation medical examiner. Now, I've spoken to a couple of them who have said, I wouldn't rush into this if I were you, but don't tell anyone I told you. And these aren't people that I've been to visit. These are guys who I know. And the Civil Aviation Safety Authority is saying, well, go to your DAMI. Now, some of these questions have been emailed in advance to the designated aviation medical examiner by pilots so that they can get informed consent when they turn up for their physical. Some of these medical examiners have sent emails back to their clients saying, we don't want you to attend this office any further for your medical examinations. We're not answering your questions. So who on earth do we trust? I mean,
that's right. That's right. The doctors, you're not allowed to go in. They're just saying here the UK has stopped jabbing pilots. Emirates apparently is backing off as well. I don't know if that's true. This is what the people are saying. Well, but I'm having lots of people approach me, Graham, that are either they're not allowed into their doctors, they're not allowed to see the psychologist, they're not even allowed to get an appointment with their doctors unless they're vaccinated. We had one woman went to get an extension on her exemption, and the doctor just got up, walked to the reception, and told the receptionist to call the police. So this woman's going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And said, "Call the police," because she was asking for an extension. It's madness. Is it APRA? Is APRA the name of the medical? Has anyone actually asked them to state, what are you doing? Are not allowing doctors to speak? APRA, because it goes against the Hippocratic Oath. What are you doing? How can you possibly justify what you're doing? No one seems to be, especially the mass media, no one seems to be confronting them, and I think it's a crime against humanity, really. Doctors have this oath to save lives. That's what they're meant to do no harm. And now, it's...
When I posted on Rumble, I got a message on the first day. I got a message from a medical specialist in Melbourne who told me that he was so glad I posted what I posted because now he no longer feels alone. He said, "I am a medical specialist in Australia. I am now classified as persona non grata. I have brought the medical profession into disrepute because I cannot give informed consent to myself, or I cannot give the information to my patients. I've been locked out of my hospital. I've had to close down my medical practice. I've had to terminate all my staff. I will never practice medicine again in Australia. And I ask you, please, Graham, please pray for my patients that they will be okay because there is no one to replace me." Now, that is APRA.
Yeah, we had a doctor on with a similar story on Monday night. We had a doctor on our show. Same thing, same story.
Yeah,
and for some social media posts.
And someone told me that last night, and it's yet to be confirmed, that 120 Filipino nurses flew into Brisbane International Airport last night to bolster the flagging staff numbers in Queensland hospitals.
Oh, well,
I mean,
we had
What's
this
driving it
news-
all, Graham? Sorry, what's driving it?
Well,
in your opinion, yeah, this question. But what do you think?
This is not about health; it's about control. Anyone who believes this is about health really does not have the intelligence to tip the water out of their shoe if the instructions were written on the heel. Really, this is not about health, guys. This is about control. We're about this pandemic, so-called pandemic, will be history in no time flat. It's going to go away soon. But what's coming down the pike if we allow these legislations to continue to be mandated and this loss of freedoms? We're going to see the climate change agenda. We're going to see the New World Order. You know, put a tin hat on me if you like. I don't care. I hated conspiracy theorists. I used to hate them because they used to drive me nuts because I was doing chemtrails for 50 years. And I used to think, you guys are crazy. But if anyone told me 2 years ago that we'd be having these discussions now, I'd have called you a conspiracy theorist.
Absolutely.
I'm a conspiracy realist now.
Absolutely.
And anyone who isn't awake to what's going on really is asking for trouble. You are.
I'm actually starting to think maybe David Icke is right. You know, they are lizards. Because I mean, seriously, how could you do this stuff otherwise? You'd have to have
To
the
your own
empathy
species.
of a lizard.
To your own species.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've just got this news in here. There's reports that 1,600 nurses could be sacked in Tasmania tomorrow. And today, at the march, a CFA volunteer came up and said they're getting the CFA to drive the ambulances because so many paramedics are leaving. Now, that's not a warning sign, and it's just insane.
I heard from Johnny Larder, the paramedic that's taking Hazard, the Jekyll Hazard.
Yeah.
I heard from him not long ago. The New South Wales ambulance sent him a staff email, they were forgetting that he's suspended, and the email said that there were 250 vacancies urgently needed to be filled by paramedics on the north coast of New South Wales alone. There were 250 shifts that couldn't be covered. Now, let's go right back to basics. The people we're talking about are educated people who've done medical degrees. They've done RNs that have done nursing degrees, paramedics who've done degrees in paramedicine. Mm-hmm. We're talking about doctors and specialists. And yet Australia, I said to a mate of mine who he does a vital work. He's a groundsman at a school. I sent him the message from this doctor, this specialist, who said to me that he was going to lose everything. And I said to him, the guy I'm talking about doesn't want to hear about any of this stuff. And I said to him, what would you say to this doctor? And he said, I don't know. He's probably not a good doctor anyway. I mean, we've got to start thinking at a deeper level in Australia. We've got to get out of this bloated on entitlement mentality that we're stuck in and see that the people who are giving up their entire childhood dreams. I mean, pilots and flight attendants are giving up their childhood dreams because they are not convinced that this is the right thing to do. And the rest of you are calling them idiots. And the rest of you are saying, you know what, it serves you right if you die of COVID. For goodness sake, we're Australia.
Amazing, isn't it?
You know?
Do you think, Graham, that some people, like some people saying people haven't woken up, but do you think there's actually people out there who have woken up and going, okay, we're going into a totalitarianistic existence. What do I have to do to fit into that world? Because I actually think people putting the circle around their face and almost attacking anti-vaxxers are actually going to the state, look, I'm on your side, don't attack me. And they're already adapting to the modern world. So instead of actually looking forward, going, do I really want to have this existence? Their survival instincts overriding their morality, and they're just going, well, what else can you do? You just got to adapt.
Keep your head down.
Do you think that's a problem as well?
I've got an answer for that, mate. I'll tell you, when I was doing a lot of training in the airline industry, I did a lot of human factors training, teaching people how to cope with stressful situations and how pilots could communicate better to make sure that everything was covered, working as a team. We also did a lot of security training, and we did a lot of looking at hijackings in the early days, and it's called Stockholm Syndrome. Now, Stockholm Syndrome, I forget the origins of it, but basically what happens if people were locked up in an aeroplane with terrorists that have been hijacked, after a while, the passengers, the victims, start to side with the terrorists. It's a survival mechanism. Now, a lot of the people that are saying, I don't want to know, they're blocking their eyes and their ears, they're intelligent people too. But they've been under a lot of mental stress. I mean, lockdowns and coercion, and let's face it, the government's high-fiving about the vaccine rates. They're losing track of the fact that most of the people who've gone for it in the last couple of months have been coerced.
Yeah, it's a relentless media campaign to back it all up.
Just destroyed them. So the Stockholm Syndrome is what's going on, and a lot of people are just saying, how can we beat this? If we all recognise the fact that all we had to do was say no. If every war was fought or was about to be fought by soldiers who looked at each other and said, what are we doing this for? And just put their guns down and went home, there'd have been a few generals left on the battlefield. We forget that 6 million Jews willingly walked into the gas chambers. They could have overwhelmed the German guards, but their spirit was so decimated by the way they were treated. And you know what, Australia, you're doing that to people at the moment who haven't yet gone along with the mandates. You're doing that to them, some of you, and on your heads be that.
I read a story about a woman that survived. She was a Jewish woman with her child. She was naked in a line. This is before the gas chambers, where they were shooting them and then they were falling into trenches. And she stood in line and she said all these people were getting shot before her. And she said to the woman behind her, why are we just standing here? Why are we just waiting? And the woman said, what else can we do? And that's it. And so I do think that a lot of these people on the steps, these young people, not just young, they're all different. They're just a slice of the diversity of Australia. I think they're young lions. These people are, if we can get through, these people could be the leaders of the next society. Because even a guy today, he was just working at Coles. He goes, I'm here. I don't care. I'm not going to get it. I'm going to stand up. So this man could become Prime Minister, who knows, because he's got the courage to come in. Someone said today on a post, they said, for November, instead of growing a moustache, why don't you just regrow your balls? Because that's what we need.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that Lunig, I thought that was, Michael, I just thought that was a great post.
The state is weaponized, though, isn't it? So that's frightening, because the state is weaponized and we're not.
Well, I was talking to Stu Peters through the week, and he was telling me, 45% of all the guns in the world are owned privately in America.
That's
and
it.
he was really proud of that. He was really proud of that.
America's got to fall for the whole thing to work, He said, you guys have all been disarmed after Port Arthur, and I while he was saying that, I was thinking, well, at least we're not having, thousands or hundreds of kids being killed in schools by gun-toting lunatics. But that's because the culture lost its discipline. The culture has lost its discipline somewhere along the way, because that certainly wasn't the case when the founding fathers had the Second Amendment.
No.
That people were walking into schools shooting people up. The culture had more discipline then. Yeah.
I think what's happened in America is they have become so intoxicated with the news media that they live in a world of panic. I mean, that's why we see a lot of psychoanalysis going on over there. There's too much media, How many times did you have to see the World Trade Center collapse before you actually knew that it collapsed? I mean,
I just want to say Michael Loria was the one that posted that. Michael, I thought that was the post of the week. So, hats off to you, man. Yeah, I agree, Graham. Sorry to interrupt.
So America feels it needs to be armed to the teeth to protect itself because of the fear generated by mainstream media, and that's why things that you guys are doing are so vitally important. We need to really invest in another strata of news and content, because we don't get news on mainstream media. We get opinions. No. And all news is some editor sitting at a desk deciding early in the morning what he wants the country to worry about for the next 24 hours. So, I mean, we're addicted to that. And I've just switched all that garbage off. And the best thing we can do in Australia is destroy our media rooms, because we're getting brainwashed by Hollywood, and then we're getting brainwashed by the talking heads on mainstream media. And we're watching reality television, which has got nothing to do with reality. I mean, The Block used to be a program about, getting an old building and turning it into a profit. Now it's about putting people into a gladiatorial conflict with each other.
Graham, is that the possibility of why some of this is actually happening, though? Because that old media is under threat. It's under threat by a new guard, which has access to the dissemination of content which it never had before. It's been totally democratized. So anyone with an iPhone can do as good a job almost as someone with a whole studio they've got to pay for. Is that why we're seeing this desperate lurch for control? Because you're talking about control. Because that's almost their last chance. It's the last gasp of the status quo, of the power.
Exactly. There are some awesome mainstream investigative journalists that must be chomping at the bit to write stories. They've probably written them about what's really going on, but there's no way they'll get to air. But most of our journalists have just gone to cut and paste.
The thing that really hit home to me was on the day that they had armoured cars going around shooting at people in the streets. I came across a Channel 9 woman who was, a news presenter, whatever, she's on the streets, and a cameraman. And I begged them, I said, please tell the people what's happening. Just 30 seconds. They're shooting children in the streets with rubber bullets. They're not trying to arrest them. They're just jumping off this vehicle and shooting at them. Please tell them. And she wouldn't look at me. She was just shivering, but she wouldn't look. And the cameraman was crying. And they put nothing to air. And that made me realize the media now is an enemy of the people.
It is.
Because that was the story of the century. Shooting at children in the streets from an armoured vehicle dressed like stormtroopers. That should have gone around the world, and they ignored it and instead portrayed the protesters as anti-vaxxers and right-wing things. That's when I realized, okay, they're not just corrupt, they're an enemy of the people.
But it's like all the institutions are an enemy of the people now, aren't they? Because I noticed today, like Lyndall Dean, do you remember Lyndall Dean? She's on the Fair Work Australia Commission. She was a dissenting voice when someone, about a month ago, when there was a claim put before the commission about the mandatory vaccinations. And she was a dissenting voice saying it's not right that the state is forcing this. Now she has to undergo training about bias before she can sit on the commission again. And not only that, she can no longer sit on any claims about vaccination status. She's disbarred from it by the commission, by the president of the commission. And that's okay. That's reported on even by the ABC, and that's okay. There's no outrage.
Tell them about the theatres, Damien. Tell them about what you sent me about the theatres today in Melbourne.
Oh, that was great. Your rant today too was fantastic about that. Well, it's true of the theatres as well. The theatres now have got together as a collective and said that in respect for their patrons and the safety of their artists and stuff as well, that only vaccinated people will be allowed on theatre premises because they're being so nice, so kind to us all. And they can make their vaccinated art, which would be government propaganda. And they all know it.
Apartheid. So that now the artistic community of Melbourne, or the bureaucracy of it, is a choir for the oppressors. That's what they are. The same with the universities. In the Vietnam War, the universities were with the protesters. Now the universities are the choirs for the oppressors. That's what they are. The whole, it's that's why there's people like you, Graham, who was a Qantas pilot, now is the face of the resistance. And there's these other people coming up, all rising up everywhere from RV to Rukshan, because there's no one else. There's no one else. The entire infrastructure at the top is corrupt.
I've got to tell you some good news. I mean, when you talked about the Victorian Police, I mean, they have relied on community support for decades. I mean, we go back only a couple of short years when those 4 officers were killed on the freeway. By that intoxicated truck driver. I mean, I cried that day. I thought that was horrible, and the way that Porsche driver spoke to them while they were crushed under that vehicle was just disgusting. Now, I'm talking to heaps of police in all states. I can tell you, and I can tell you that a lot of Victorian police are starting to speak up. They're forming up. They've formed a new union, policeforfreedom.org.au. Yep. And a lot of comments about when I posted that some weeks ago that this was starting, a lot of people were saying, it's too little too late. They've already done their dash. But a lot of other people are building hope in that. I want you to know, you would have seen a lot of stuff by Senior Constable Craig Backman.
Yeah, we had him on.
Yeah, we had him on the show.
You had him on. He's just awesome. He calls me Australia's granddad. I'm going to clobber him one day for doing that. But we've got Crystal Mitchell, the Senior Sergeant Crystal Mitchell. What an angel. Now, what's really sad is these people with integrity in the police forces, they're no longer police. We're going to need them in the rebuild. These people need to be there. Now, there is going to be a rebuild. Look, there is a thuggish element, especially in Victoria, and to a large extent in New South Wales. There is a thuggish element. You can see when you look at Real News and Arvie and all that, you can see that there's a thuggish element there. And those guys need to be very careful because they're going to be held to account because a lot of what they're doing is illegal. And a lot of people in the Victorian police are starting to realise that. I think we're going to see some major pushback within that group. There are hundreds.
It's illegal if there's a rule of law. It's illegal if there is a rule of law. But like you're saying today, I think Michael was saying of the nurses, they brought in foreign nurses instead into Queensland. Is this not the same thing that they'll do? We've already seen foreign police officers operating in Victoria. Will they just get rid of these guys and say, good, it's good to see those guys go? Because they're not the sort of people that they want to enforce these draconian measures.
And I have to say, all this week, since we were protesting in St Kilda on Saturday, and we've been on the Parliament steps since Monday, and the police have been fantastic. I mean, you know, we had no confrontations. They've stood back. Honestly, it's been great. And every day that there's no arrests and they're just wanting to make sure everything's clear, everything's calm, it's just started rebuilding trust and stuff like this. So it's been terrific. And to be honest, they've kept their cool while there's been a lot of protesters that have let them have it. You know? And
it's amazing they're all still alive. They're constantly at these super spreader events and they're still surviving, which is just testament to them.
People seem to think rubber bullets are like those Nerf bullets, you know, those sponge rubber things.
No.
Have you seen?
I got shot in the hand. My hand's still literally. My knuckle got broken. Weeks later, my hand's still very sore. No,
Can you imagine a young child being hit by a high velocity rubber bullet?
They kill him. And they used to kill him in Ireland. They kill him. You've actually, Damien said it best. Remember, Damien, where you said you got a 3 times more chance
of dying? There's a 3% chance of fatality with a rubber bullet. So there's more chance of dying with a rubber bullet than there is of COVID.
Yeah, and the zeal that those guys, those stormtroopers,
was funny the first time, second time.
And, you know, I spoke to a few protesters who were at the Shrine of Remembrance when that confrontation took place. They were picking up their rubbish. They were putting it in bags.
We were there, Graham. We got arrested on the steps.
Did you?
We were there. Well, but we refused to leave the steps because we knew we were going to get arrested. We thought, well, you can drag us off the steps, and we both got. They were bouncing on our heads with their shields, banging us into the ground, going, "Stop making us do this! Stop making us do this!" We're going.
We got assaulted.
Yeah,
we got assaulted by the Victorian Police Force.
Damien did an amazing speech.
Quiet, peaceful protest.
Damien did an amazing speech right up to them. I did a speech from the stairs that went viral, and they thought we were organisers, but we weren't. They were just handing around the mic, and we had a crack. But it was amazing. They were around us like stormtroopers. We didn't know the people were getting shot because we were getting beaten up. But when we got home, we found out that the other protesters got shot at. It was the darkest day in my history as an Australian. But the people there...
He wants to enact these laws that he can do that at any point he wants, or he could have arrested all of us on that on that shrine because we were, you know, the wrong type of people, because that's the sort of stuff he's got in this legislation. Your characteristics can lead to you being detained. Your characteristics. What the hell does that mean?
Oh, well, on that point, Graham, I'm bringing in, we call him the Golden Guardy. He's a lawyer attached to this site, and he wants to talk a bit about the bill. Are you happy to stay around for a little while?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here.
Could I ask Graham one more question before we get to Guardy? Because just something that fascinates me by you, because I've heard you talk about your addictions, right? Which I find interesting because I've had my own problems with addictive nature. And the only thing that I understand, this push for control and power, just unadulterated power, doesn't even matter if it doesn't make money. It can destroy an economy as long as it gets power. The only thing I can really equate it to is addiction, because it's about oblivion. You don't really care. You just need the fix constantly, and you cannot possibly get the fix, and you just stay on the chase. Is that fair? Was that something you would agree with, Graham? Or?
Yeah, power and control is very, very addictive, and Daniel Andrews is the walking epitome of that. But you know, underneath every bad behaviour, there's a pain that drives it, And any addiction is brought about by a feeling of being rejected and not being loved. Well, I suggest, Daniel, that if that's what's driving your addiction to power and control, you're going to be at the next election very, very heavily addicted, and you won't have the power to bring down these things that you've been doing now. I think it's time to pack. I think any sitting member of parliament in any jurisdiction in Australia needs to think very carefully. There's a lot of nervous backbenchers there. You have woken a sleeping tiger when you stirred the spirit of the Australian people this way, and they will not forget, and they will bring down the force of their political rights in this country, and they will vote you out. You need to start acting now to restore these people back to where they were and get out of this agenda that you've got running.
I think he's finding a way to get around democracy.
Anyway,
potentially, anyway.
I'm going to bring in the Golden Guardy.
Perfect.
My friend,
Gentlemen,
welcome to the show.
I just want to say,
This is the mature white male show. In the future, we'd like you to have the thing. Graham is the only unbearded one.
If Daniel Andrews is watching, Daniel, come over here. I'll give you a hug. I'll give you love.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So you're not going to feel rejected. But
Turn it around, Daniel.
No, I echo what you guys have been saying. I mean, I personally see him as something of a mythomaniac, although I'm not a qualified person to say that, but that's my observation. And the thuggish behaviour of the police, who will be brought into account and will be sued for assault, I have no doubt about that either. But getting to this point, which you asked me to talk about, Michael, and that is this Public Health and Wellbeing Amendment Pandemic Management Bill. What a mouthful. Let's just call it the Pandemic Bill of 2021. It runs for, I'm looking at it as I speak to you, it's huge. It's really long, and it's something that I really recommend everyone go and read it. You can go, if you Google Victorian bills, it'll lead you to bills currently before the Parliament, and then you'll find that straight away, and then you can click into it and download it as a Word or PDF, and you can see what it's all about. But it's huge in the number of paragraphs that are there. It goes over 100 pages, and it talks about powers. In the space of the few minutes that we have, I obviously can't go through it in any detail.
No, we can go over.
What I can tell you,
Graham has to leave. We can go over.
Let me give you just a brief summary of the sort of things that it includes. First of all, power vests completely and totally with the Premier, whoever the Premier is, in this case Andrews. So he basically makes the decisions himself, and he can do it at a whim at any time. There's no checks and balances. The checks and balances that are in here are not checks and balances. It's a nonsense.
He's health minister, isn't it? Yeah.
No. It doesn't. It previously vested with the CHO, but now he says it's the health minister, but it's really not. The health minister consult with him, but Andrews is the ultimate decision maker for everything. And his responsibility to give reports is done in such a way that it's effectively a non-report. He can choose to say what he wants to when he reports to Parliament or to the committee, and they don't have any power over him anyway, effectively. So really he has complete totalitarian dictatorial power in his hands.
So he's an emperor. It's an emperor law.
Right. Number
like
two
Napoleon.
is that the powers that his ability to make mandates is so wide, he can do virtually anything. If, for example, he has a suspicion that there is some sort of a disease in some backhole village in Africa, he can use that as the basis for calling a lockdown for 3 months. And he can do 3 months at a time endlessly. He doesn't need to go back to get permission. He can just do it forever. So he can do that. The next thing is he can basically round up people at will from the street. People with characteristics, classes of people. He can literally round them up. They don't even have to commit an offence.
He's talking about you, Graham.
Yeah.
Imagine they can round you up.
You're lucky in New South Wales, mate.
they can place you in some sort of a centre. So, for example,
building.
Right, but if he chooses to, let's say he chooses to collect all the unvaccinated people, or all the people who may not like him, who have a voice against him, who he considers as some threat to the well-being of whatever, he collects them and he just plonks them in this place. They don't have any right to legal representation. They have no right of review, or it's so limited that it doesn't count, is what I can say, right? It all has to go to the CHO, who makes a decision under the Premier. It's not reviewable by the court in the usual way. So really, let me just say this. Listen, I'm an immigrant to this country. I'm the son of Holocaust survivors. I understand, and I'm a lawyer of 42 years. I understand better than most people what freedom means and what rule of law means. And I'm telling you, and I've been to communist countries behind the Iron Curtain and to Cuba in the last 5-10 years. I know what communism and totalitarian is, and I'm telling you unequivocally that this bill is all about totalitarianism. That's it. I'm not going to mince my words with it. It's totalitarian.
Before you go on, can we discuss that then? Because Graham, this is what we're up against down here in Victoria. I mean, I know you had that big talk today, but this is letting Australians know that this is actually happening now. We're on the steps of Parliament now. We call it the edge of democracy. That's where we are. Once this bill, he's gone. Once this bill goes through, that's it. We fall into totalitarianism. It's extraordinary.
Well,
and Damien and I will probably just vanish like that,
Well, I Michelle and I have
Stop laughing. It's not funny, Damien. Stop laughing. It's not funny.
Michelle and I talked about the fact that one night 4 black 4-wheel drives might come up and I might disappear. I mean, I'm being a bit melodramatic.
You're not being melodramatic. Look what happened to Cossack.
No, not really.
You're not being melodramatic at all. We had Tofu on here on Monday, and Tuesday he was arrested.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
hey,
guys.
Gardy.
Sorry about that.
It was unrelated. He's trying to spike ratings. He's trying to spike ratings, Graham. Sorry, mate. It was unrelated. He was making a movie and he started talking about that.
The other thing I want to say to you,
Sorry, Gardy. Go ahead.
It's all good and well for someone like me to scream and shout, "There's a fire, guys. There's a fire in the house." And it's all good and well for you guys to say, "Hang on a minute." But the truth is that the majority of people out there in the community have never in their life read an act of parliament or a bill. They've never for one moment considered jurisprudence or philosophical issues like this until it comes to get them personally. That's when they'll wake up to it. It'll be too late by then.
That'd be too late.
Really too late. And I'm screaming and saying this is a real danger. We could end up, this is a North Korea CCP China style of
Well, Michael, we had a stay of execution today. Gardy, we had a stay of execution today. So he was trying to push this through the upper house, and now for some reason,
I didn't know that was true.
It's been pushed to next month. Is that not the case?
We haven't heard confirmation of that. Anyway, this is one of the reasons of why it's so important to have Graham on, because Graham, you have an extraordinary reach now going around the world. I mean, if you get onto Tucker Carlson, you can actually go there now and say, forget what was happening before. We are literally on the verge now where basically, I know Candace woman was saying about invading Australia. Candace Owens. We might need to be invaded, because we might need to be saved by a free country, because we're no longer going to be a free country. It's that terrible.
We're hoping that there's some people in America negotiating for us to be on Tucker. Myself and Josh Yoder, the framing it in the likes of the American pilot and the Australian pilot at war again, as bringing ANZUS into the whole thing and trying to get some generation going over there with that.
Yeah, but the problem with what you're saying is, and I'm not having a go at you, is that it's all what the governments tend to do is when the heat is on, when the pressure is on, they'll give exemptions to the one or two just to get rid of them. For example, Australia Post apparently got an exemption because it's federal and therefore Dan doesn't affect it. And the same happened with the pilots in America. But the question, what about the ordinary deplorable, the serf, the mug who gets up early in the morning, works his ass off, comes home to support his wife and 4 kids? What about them, the disempowered ones?
The tennis. Look, the tennis players don't have to be vaccinated, but everybody working there to make the event happen has to be vaccinated, and only the vaccinated people are allowed in to see it. but these high-profile tennis
Yeah,
players get off.
A rule
Look,
for
you-
these.
It's like we see
we-
AOC going to the gala and she doesn't have a mask on, but everybody else has got a mask on. All her minions have got a mask on, and they're usually Hispanic, you know, whatever looking at. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
You know what we've got to recognise in this country is what's happening in Victoria, and believe me, I'm talking to the everyman and the every woman who's going through this, because for some reason I've been conjured up as their spokesperson, the people in the middle ground, and that's where I belong. And I really care about these people, I really do. And what we've got to remember is that all this stuff is going down. You look at the Labor premiers. I'm not being political, being party politics, but McGowan, Andrews, and Palaszczuk are the most dictatorial premiers we've ever had. Palaszczuk talked on Sunrise the other morning about the camps that they're building up there being used for the unvaxxed. She said it in plain view. And Koshy and whoever
it's called a wellness camp. How Orwellian.
Yeah.
Resilience.
Well, it's well
Re-education camps. Yeah, re-education.
Wellness up there.
The guys running that show, the guys interviewing her, just let that go over their heads. Now we live in a situation like this because we have a federal government which has totally and utterly destroyed the Federation of Australia. We are the apartheid divided states of Australia right now, under the auspices of the Prime Minister, who has been absent without leave. We've got 3 Labor premiers riding roughshod over the population. And where's Albanese? Where's the Australian opposition, the Labor opposition? I mean,
but they support it. You know, you're missing the point. Both sides of the aisle support this kind of regime.
They do.
The only difference is, and again, I don't want to be political, but the only difference is that the 3 Labor premiers are putting as much pressure they can on the federal government because they know there's an election coming in about May or June of next year, and they want to get rid of the Liberal federal government to have one of theirs. And then once that's just party political nonsense between them. They're all in it together.
It's the same in New Zealand, Graham. That woman that they voted in, like the saviour, who was all about bringing people together. Yeah, even after that mass shooting where she was embracing the Muslims, all about bringing people together.
She was in the hijab. She was doing the whole bit.
Yeah, is now celebrating the fact that she's dividing the country. She's bringing in apartheid. She's celebrating it.
She's saying she's doing it. Yeah,
that's
exactly what it's going to be.
She's actually happy about it. It's
segregated
and now Dan. Everything down here, Graham, when we're at these marches, everybody has lost family members, mothers who won't see their daughters and their sons.
At the moment, Michael, I can only see one solution to all of this. Either an act of God, let God do something, please help us, or more realistically, I would like to see the governor, Linda Dessau, liquidate both houses of Parliament in Victoria, and let's go to the polls. Let the people speak, because I reckon that Dan Andrews right now would be kicked out instantly. If we wait until November next year, we'll be so emotionally broken. This bill will destroy us. There'll be nothing left to vote for next.
They would have gotten to her though. They would have gotten to the Governor General, wouldn't they? They would have. You just can't
I don't know the
machinations. Sorry, Graham. Have you say, Graham.
I don't. I was on a Zoom group of 100 celebrities the other day, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Zach Bush, and a lot of professional athletes who are forming up, and they're about to take action. And I was listening to a lot of rhetoric, and I'm listening to us talk about a lot of stuff tonight. But I want everyone to realise that while we're having this conversation, people have taken their own lives in Victoria. And they have around the world, but mainly around Australia. And I said to that group, we were on that Zoom call for 3.5 hours with the most incredible humans that I've ever had the opportunity to share a screen with. They were amazing, and what they're planning and wanting to do is really good. But I estimated to them all. I said to them, listen, while we're having this talk fest, I would imagine easily from the emails and messages I'm getting that while we've been doing this, 50 people in this country have taken their own lives. Now, Zach Bush was so moved, he had to take himself off screen. He was crying. And everyone else on that screen was crying. And I was sobbing as a blithering mess. And it breaks my heart. Now, we can talk about politics all we like. We can talk about the semantics around this so-called scamdemic. But the truth is, what's going on in our country is destroying people literally.
It's carnage.
Literally.
Carnage.
It's carnage. And if we as Australians countenance that, no matter what medical opinions we have, we are not Australian.
No.
We are
Graham, there's only, what was there today? Maybe 150 people at the steps of Parliament?
Yeah.
What now when we went on the Westgate Bridge, there would have been about 25,000 people there, and you really felt the power and the strength of the people. And if you like, we won that day, whatever that means.
Yeah.
We won that day strategically.
Yeah.
But it hasn't eventuated again.
No.
I cannot tell
It
you
just
why.
get- it
It
just
has not
gets quieter.
eventuated. And things have gotten worse since then. Things have gotten worse since that point.
I think people are scared by this bill where they could end up in jail for 2 years. I think they're sitting at home going,
That's
do
it.
we go there?
That's what.
Do we
And
go
a
there?
fine of $100,000 on top of it.
$100,000 fine.
Well, you know
That's
what? You know
Or
what?
2 years
Jess?
jail.
You know what, people? Anybody watching this, all it takes for evil to thrive is for people of goodwill to do nothing.
Yeah,
That's right.
So we
That's
have
right,
to
Graham.
wake up and we have to have our say. Now, you don't
But
have
what do
to
you
be
say?
violent.
Yeah, but what do you say to someone? I get you, but what do you say to someone who's going to be arrested for 2 years and going to be fined $100,000 and lose their house? What do you say?
Well, that
to
law
them?
hasn't passed yet. That law hasn't passed yet. So if today or even tomorrow there was 30,000 people on the steps of Parliament House, I'm telling you, that place would
The
be rocking, and
politicians
those people
would
in there
listen.
would be shaken. Well, they'd be frightened because it
the
would be frightening to
politicians
feel
would
that
listen.
force.
Because it
outside.
hasn't gone through yet. It hasn't gone the vote, hasn't got the upper house. They'd listen. I mean, Fiona Patton, the recent party?
Yeah.
She's come out and said that this bill is very conservative. It's a very nice bill. She's actually come out and said something like that. I mean, that's because she's already bought probably. But this is what it is. This is the line in the sand now. What used to be as Australians and who we're going to be is right here now, and the rest of the states will follow. Because the rest of the premiers are going to go, this is great, I'm going to get those laws and join Dan in who can be the greatest dictator. And it's right
Andrews,
now.
Can you remember the speech the comment Dan Andrews made about Margaret Court? About, her not deserving to draw breath, and she breeds hate speech and she's diversive. He made this speech about Margaret Court that, regardless of what you think about Margaret Court, he's now doing exactly what he accused her of.
They always do.
Exactly.
They always do. It's always an act of
all the
projection.
time.
Yeah,
He's
projection.
been caught out
Hypocrisy.
doing that so many times.
Fiona Patton did a video today. She did a video today about
That's
all
right.
the online hate speech she receives and how terrible and hard it is for her as a woman in the Parliament. Shocking.
Yeah.
We've got to feel empathy for her and sorry for
I
her.
don't-
we
And that'll be the
do-
justification for the laws that she says yes to. That'll be
And
the
yeah.
justification for it.
And Catherine
No,
Cummings
no,
actually
see-
came down today and did a speech with us at the prospect that she could be tossed out of Parliament because she's breaking the law by being there, or breaking Dan's law. So, yeah, it's I do see
we gotta
courage
do, we've
around,
gotta-
but not enough.
Sorry,
We've
Graham.
got to turf out the politicians and put the citizens in there. We have to have citizens in the parliaments, not politicians.
Let me tell you something on that. I've been speaking to a number of people who are now suddenly crawling out of the woodworks, who are trying to stand to get electoral support. They're kind of positioning themselves for the next election, right? And without exception, each of them that I've spoken to are real mental lightweights. They don't understand any of the legalities or the philosophical or economic issues. They are predominantly opportunists, and they throw their own jingos around just to get attention, which are sexy and very inviting. But let me tell you, they're not going to be any better than Fiona Patton and the other two dropkicks, from the Greens and from the Animal Party. That's the problem. We've got ourselves we're getting what we deserved. We have got ourselves the worst caliber politicians in this country, and now we're going to reap what we've sown all those years.
Well, the danger is there won't even be a next election for them to even run in. That's sort of maybe a fantasy that they're thinking that's still going to operate that way. And
Under
if there is, it'll be so
dictatorship, why
rigged.
would he need an election? Because he'd just say the vaccinated or those who are going to vote against him can't turn
Anyone
up.
who
Can't
votes
vote.
against
That'll
him
be
will
just
just
as
be
easy
herded
strokes as
out
a
and
pen.
pushed away.
Yep.
It's very simple. Yeah.
Or do an online voting like they did in America, and who knows? Who
But I think by having Graham on though, I want to go back to Graham and the hope that he does. Now he did that amazing speech, and it was a dark day. It was dark day. My wife was crying in the bed and waking up crying, cuddling me this. You did a speech, Graham, and even in a thing like you did the remarkable thing saying you were addicted to porn, which really made me want to come forward and go, Damien's addicted to porn too. I don't know what to do about it. But there's, but you filled one man, Graham, one man throwing himself on the pyre, filled Australia with hope. So I believe, like Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits rising, there is always hope. You can always rise up. And look what you're doing now with this Hoodies Helpers. This is what it takes. One person can change things. And that's what these speakers are coming down today. We're going to get some of the people who are there every day on tomorrow night, just to introduce them, these heroes, unsung heroes to the community. But they get down, they hand over the microphone to anybody. Anyone can have a speak. And these people who've never been to a protest, who are trembling with fear, get up and they speak. And then once they've stood up, they can't sit back down. And you, Graham, are the face of that, my friend. That's why it's such an honour to have you on. And I think it's very easy to get down and negative and this, but we need to do William Wallace speeches. We need to rouse the people. And today is the day to stand up. This week is the week to fight. And if we get a 2-week extension, now is the time to fight, because now in the future, people will look back and go, what did you do in those 2 weeks? Yeah. And you either stood up and fought, you stood up for what Australia was, or you just sat down and watched it go. And if you sat down and watched it all fall, no one will want to know you. No one will want to sing about you. But if you stood up, you will be remembered. And that's where you'll be remembered, Graham.
Well, you know, I do appreciate that. It comes with an awesome responsibility. But I talked about my addictions because I'm a broken man like everybody else, and I'm not pretending to be anything I'm not. And I want everybody to know I wear my heart on my sleeve. I just try not to stick my arm in the toilet, you know. But for me, it's you know, I'm a very unfashionable man, sadly, in this country. Anything that's reflecting out of me, I link to Jesus Christ, because I'm a Christian, and it was Christ that got me through the porn addiction. It was Christ that stopped me from wanting to kill myself in 2006. And I live under a banner that belongs to a man who died 2,000 years ago on a cross, so a filthy porn addict like me can have a second chance. And it's the passion of my relationship with him that wants me to be as honest and as Christ-like as I can. So when people elevate me, it makes me feel smaller, because I want them to point the glory to where I get that from, and it ain't me. And so when I tell you about my brokenness, I'm not trying to be some kind of hero. I'm trying to tell you that I left school when I was 13. I had a criminal record by the time I was 17. The only thing that kept me going was a desire from the age of 5 to be a pilot. That's all I ever wanted to be. And I got there because I never took no as an answer. I always, if I got no as an opinion, I kept going until I got the opinion that I wanted. And I rose to the top of my field. And I got there because I'm just an everyman, you know. The one thing that I didn't like about my job was having to wear a uniform through the terminal. I never felt I deserved to have it. I love the flying, and the passion of the flying. I love the taking off and the landing, and the flying around thunderstorms was awesome. But having that notoriety really didn't sit well with me, because I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. And yet I did it for 53 years. I was a captain for 32 years in the world's oldest and safest airline. And I made it. You know what? I made it. But all of that 53 years and my whole life has been for this moment I'm approaching 69. It's all been about this. And so it was worth it. If I didn't ever wear a pilot's uniform or a Qantas uniform, I wouldn't have the notoriety that I've got now. And I don't want the notoriety for me. I want it for Jesus. And Jesus wants something a whole lot better for this country than what he's got, what we've got.
And I'll just jump in and say to you that even for anybody listening here who is not religious, is not Christian, I happen to be Jewish, not that it matters, it doesn't really matter. It's not about that. All you have to, if you are a person who believes in humanity, you believe in people's rights to be free and to have dignity, and if you believe in a society that's pluralistic, where we can choose to live as we choose and we can respect one another, God or no God, religion or no religion, then you can't abide by what's going on at the moment. You just can't. Because what's going on, so one more thing, the bottom line of what's going on is they're trying to get God out of the formula, right? That's the bottom line. When God is removed from the formula, what then happens is we have human beings who make their decisions based on their own logic and rationale, and there's no accountability for anything. Morality is out the window. That's what's going on here, and that's communism 101. That's what they do.
It is.
God becomes Dan Andrews or Xi Jinping or dear leader or Adolf Hitler. That's God.
The science. Trust the science. It becomes,
trust the science that made the virus. Trust the science that made the virus.
Scientism.
A teacher told me once because you have to.
That's right.
You discuss God. What is God? Does he exist? And she said years ago to me, God is love. That's it. It's love.
That's it.
If you love someone, that's the proof of God. In any form you want to believe it, that's love. And love, through all the plagues, all the wars, love has been passed down, and we still talk about it now. And one of the first things that children draw is love hearts and love. Love is hugely strong. And what's going on now where people talk about a spiritual war, because in the protests they talk about it all the time, what I believe in now is there is a rise of evil. And the bureaucrats are unrolling the evil that these evil leaders are telling us, and the bureaucrats out of cowardice are unrolling it. What's happening now is a battle between good and evil. And if you call love God, then good for you. You throw it from Jesus, I'm with you. I'm a big believer of Jesus, and especially his teachings. But that, to me, that is what's happening now. It's a fight between good and evil, and good will prevail, but at the moment, it's a hard fight.
I want to put my faith into perspective. I believe God is about relationships and love and freedom of choice. We're free to choose whether you can't mandate somebody to love you. Daniel Andrews, you might like to think about that. You cannot mandate somebody to love you. It has to be freedom of choice. Now, I preach a lot of sermons in churches, and I run a lot of seminars and stuff. I do a lot of public speaking. I have a beautiful relationship with Jesus Christ, but I don't like religion. I think religion is the business of God conducted by men, and they suck at it, to be honest with you. And I think we can see that now, because where are the churches? Are the churches writing exemption letters for people who have a faith that says that they shouldn't be vaccinated? They're not. Many of the churches are referring to people like us who are waiting to give informed consent as a lunatic fringe. So
we had a great priest on last night, I will say. Brother Rizzo was fantastic.
Oh, we did have we got a great priest comes on Sunday.
We found some there is some exceptions.
There are. But at the end of the day, it's all about relationship. And when my wife forgave the man who molested her every weekend for 6 years when she was a child, a church elder, I was there, and I saw what happened. And the guy said to her when she forgave him, she said, "That's good. I want you to know that I forgive you too, because you know you were just as responsible as I was." Right? And I grabbed him by the shoulder and I wanted to thump him. And she said, "No, no." And she looked up at the sky and she said, "God, give me strength." And she looked at that man and she said, "Despite everything you just said, I still forgive you." And I saw the evil leaving, and he lost control when that happened, and she got her control back. Forgiveness is powerful. And I coined a phrase that day, that grace and evil can't live in the same house, and evil is always the first to leave. And that's the absolute truth. And that's what love's about, and that's what my faith's about. And that's why I have faith through Christ that this country can restore itself with love and compassion. And that's what we've got to do. That's what the spirit of the Anzacs is all about. You know, she'll be right nowadays means, it doesn't matter, who cares? She'll be right in the old days, in the tradition of the Anzacs was, they're bombing the daylights out of it, but it doesn't matter. We're going to get through this. And that's the spirit she'll be right that we've got to get back in touch with in this country. Yesterday, guys. Yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I might wrap it up there, guys.
It's like God works with people, isn't it? It's like, wherever two or more of you are gathered in my name, then I am there. So it's God works through people.
Parliament House.
Could I ask one more question? It's a really pragmatic question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It's a really quick, pragmatic question. I just want to know, there's an inventory of planes sitting on tarmacs throughout the Western world that have been sitting idle for 2 years. Now, They can't just crank up and suddenly start flying these things, surely. What consideration must be given to that technology?
They're being maintained while they're out in the desert. They keep them in a non-corrosive environment in the desert. They're all taped up, and before they come back to fly, they go through an exhaustive process of engineering. So there's no risk that that's going to happen. I believe out at Alice Springs Airport, there's probably 60 or 80 Cathay Pacific aircraft, A350s,
Wow.
which is state of the art, just sitting in the desert. So, when that process happens, it'll be okay. But anybody, honestly, let's be honest, anyone who thinks that air travel is going to return to its former glory, they don't need to buy a ticket to Disneyland. They're already living in it.
That's right.
When climate change comes down the barrel and we're confronted with having carbon credits that are more valuable than the cash we've got in the bank, people aren't going to be flying anywhere much, I can tell you now. So if you think you're going to be free because you've been jabbed now, make the most of it while you can. As I say, if you're buying a ticket to Disneyland, don't bother because you're already living there.
Well, we're in Melbourne. We still can't go to regional Victoria, and we're meant to be
that's
free.
right.
We're not allowed to go to
I'm
regional
actually lucky
Victoria.
I can go more than 5 kilometres. I'm going to wrap it up. I've said everything I want to say. Gardy, thank you, my friend, for coming on. Is there anything you want to say before we leave? Anything hopeful?
It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Always a pleasure.
There it is.
Anytime.
Thanks, Gardy.
Great, Gardy. You, Damien?
No, I'm good, mate.
I'm scared to ask you that, to be honest. Graham, I'm going to let you take out our audience.
Graham.
And Graham, it's an honour to have you on. If you want to come on, you got a spare time, we'd love to have you on. Thank you for all the hope you've given us.
I've really enjoyed this. In fact, I'm a bit sorry that it's over, but I can understand why. We are one, and we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We share a dream and sing with one voice. I am, you are, we are Australians.
Sounds like he's still working for Qantas. It's like he's still there.
We can actually still sing that now because we are, although we're getting into apartheid, but it's getting harder to sing and believe it. Eventually it'll be a lie.
Yeah.
If we give them our spirit, they can force us to do things, but if we give them our spirit, we're dead. Don't give them the spirit.
Yeah.
Now I want to end on an actress. She's a theatre actress who has left the theatre because she doesn't believe in everything that's happening, and so now she doesn't know what to do. She's looking at some of my plays at the moment. She's a very brave young thing, but she's getting a lot of stick from the artistic community, and her name's Pia, and this isn't her poem, but she did this poem, and I said that I'd go out with it tonight. And so good night, gentlemen. Thank you so much. This is Pia, and my hat's off to her for her bravery to come down and be on the steps of on the Parliament. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Right here, right now, right in front of you. This is a WMD, woman of my own destiny. Beneath these baggy clothes, I've got enough thoughts and words to blow this show sky high. And my shrapnel's gonna stick inside everyone, 'cause I'm a wanton mad Delilah, won't march to nobody's drum. They can fire all the insults they like, won't make a dent. 'Cause these words are more than decoration. I write to make a difference. And they can't mold me into deference, 'cause I'm awake to their means of distraction. I want more than plastic deities, want more than stick-on diamonds, want more than department store stock take, 'cause I've taken stock off this well-masked dictatorship, and I'm wondering, where's my democracy? I wield my diction as a weapon of mass media debunction. And I'm a woman whose mind's being dominated. A woman who speaks her mind. What a danger! Must be a wench with a mental disorder. Or what's more, a well-wicked dissident. I'll pay. Or a woman ill-mannered enough to dream.